It is the year 2472, and the Earth has suffered a great calamity. Hundreds of years of popular culture have vanished. Without the sacred films and texts for guidance, civilization is devoid of anything cool. Then, 3 incubation chambers are unearthed, and from within, men from the time of the great blockbusters emerge. Now, through highly interesting conversations, they share invaluable insight about what once was. The movies, the shows, the comics, toys, and books. This is
the Hyperspace.
Podcasting in the 25th century.
Welcome in, podcast pioneers, to the hyperspace, podcasting in the 25th century, the interweb's first and only podcast that we know of. My name is Jared.
And I'm Matt.
And I'm Mike Unit.
Mike Unit? Mike Unit.
Is this a stand-in mic? Or is this the...
Is this the mic with the little jewel on your neck?
Yes.
Okay.
And Beeger's listening to everything we say.
Viva. That's good. You know, that's coming out in theaters next month. I'm going to go see it.
I thought it already came out.
Nope, September. I'm going to go check it out.
I thought it came out in 1980.
Yeah, it came out in 1979, but
79.
They're re-releasing it in theaters next month. It is now the only Star Trek film I have not seen in theaters.
Yeah,
and I will soon correct that. So,
watch some animalistic Klingons yelling at V'ger coming at him.
That's right.
Those Klingons were pissed.
They were, man. But you know, we kind of let something go last week. We officially entered double digits on the podcast. This is episode 11.
That's right. Congratulations, everybody.
So this podcast goes to 11 now.
It goes to 11.
But it goes to 11.
But most podcasts only go to 10. But this
I thought
one,
we were the first.
We are. I mean, so this podcast now goes to 11. And it's the only podcast right now. But we got a big news-heavy show this week.
That's right.
In fact, it's all news.
It is. As we record this, the D23 Expo in Anaheim, California has just wrapped. Dropped a lot of Star Wars, Marvel, lot of stuff.
All kinds of stuff.
All kinds of stuff. And we're going to break down some of that for you tonight, today, or whenever you're listening to the show. But we have a lot to cover here, guys, so if you don't mind,
why wait?
Let's jump right into it. Let's go.
News from the interwebs.
All right, so in news from the interwebs this
Got some
week.
sad news.
Yeah,
let's do the sad news first.
Okay, so it was revealed shortly before the D23 Expo that Sony has decided not to continue with Marvel Studios using the Spider-Man character. This would mean Tom Holland's version of the character is no longer in the Marvel Cinematic Universe going forward.
That's correct.
Which, that kind of sucks.
You know, this was hinted before the recent Spider-Man movie came out, that Sony had been kind of threatening this kind of break of a partnership. And it's really sad news to see that they went through with it. And I saw that Tom Holland did confirm that he's going to continue on as Sony's Spider-Man actor. But to think of the build-up that the Marvel Universe has given that Spider-Man character over the past few years, and then to just drop that whole storyline and start anew is just, it's devastating.
Especially where they left it in Far From Home.
Well, you see, I know that Sony had Spider-Man on loan, and there was a lot of conditions set forth to use him in the MCU. And I don't know the legality, and I don't know exactly why they wanted to pull Spider-Man back. But I have hopes that there's going to be an 11th hour agreement where Spider-Man can remain in the MCU.
Well, I'm not even sure it's Sony. I think there's all kinds of stuff floating around out there, so that it's impossible to know what's real or not. But one of the things that seems to be is that Disney is asking for more than they originally had.
Mhm.
But I guess they were getting all toy merchandising, which I don't know how that works, but
Yeah.
it just seems like if they had an agreement, they need to sustain that agreement.
Sure. Well, what I was kind of hinting at is that the Spider-Man in the MC universe, I think, arguably has become one of the more popular versions of Spider-Man, albeit that the earlier versions of Spider-Man movies that came out in the past 15, 20 years were big hits. And I don't doubt that a Sony version with Tom Holland wouldn't be a substantially, big blockbuster at the movies. But I think the MCU fan base is very vocal and very dedicated and very loyal. And I think you're going to have a huge, huge uproaring when Sony starts to when they start to have production of their first Spider-Man movie, or at least hint that they're going to. And I think that you're going to see a huge backlash in the fan base of Spider-Man in this regard. And I think you're going to have a huge petition going forth to try and get him back into the MCU. Because to Jared's point, the cliffhanger that they left Spider-Man at in Far From Home was enormous, and for them not to continue on with that storyline and to start a new branch is going to be very difficult for the fans to buy into. So I think you're going to have a huge public uproaring and uprising on the internet and at Marvel's doors and Sony's doors to get this fixed.
Yeah. And, I should make clear, and it's pretty obvious to anyone listening, we have no inside information and
No.
Really very limited knowledge on studio politics and finances. But, we just are commenting on how this is going to impact our enjoyment of the product put out by Sony. It's interesting that just a few days ago, Tom Holland gave an interview and he kind of muddied the waters a little bit. In this interview, it makes it sound as if Sony is picking up threads of Far From Home and continuing the story on their own, not necessarily discounting what has happened, but not being able to specifically reference it. And I have his quote here. He says, "I think the best work I've ever done in any film is the scene with John on the plane. And that's such a pivotal moment for the 3 films that we're making. Well, the 2 films we've made and 1 film we're making. I don't really know how to describe it without giving stuff away. I'm trying really hard here." Laughs. So it sounds to me like whatever Sony's doing is definitely standing on the shoulders of what Marvel has done so far. But is there something that precludes them from getting Jon Favreau back, getting Marissa Tomei back? You got to figure that they're not going to be statues of Robert Downey Jr. everywhere in a Sony film.
Well, they own all the Spider-Man stuff, so they actually could continue the storyline no problem. They just wouldn't be able to mention, like you say, like Happy or the Avengers or anything like that. It would be very odd. It'd be like suddenly like someone like you see them a month later and they've lost all this weight and their skin's all sagging and they look all weird. I think that's what's something we might get if they do this.
Like I say, I'm not an expert on it, but I have read things that said, well, they can't even use the same costume that they did in the Marvel films, which would be easily explained away because he's already had like 8 costumes in the appearances he's had. But it sucks.
I just can't believe they can't work this out. The movie made over $1 billion. I mean, it just seems impossible that they can't come to some sort of agreement.
I still believe in my heart that you're going to see an 11th hour change of tune. I really think you're going to see them come to an agreement and continue on. And whether, to your point, Mike, that means that somebody's going to get a bigger percentage of either merchandising or film revenue or royalties in the back end. Who knows what they want to agree upon. But I would be shocked if something like that didn't happen. With the interwebs these days, people are much more involved. People are much more passionate. And it's much harder to be secretive about these things, and things become very transparent and information's out there. So people are going to be very vocal and I think very passionate about this upcoming break of a partnership or a future partnership with Sony and Disney. So,
if The Last Jedi has taught us anything, fan backlash can actually hurt you.
Yeah, exactly.
And as it hurt Solo, because I talked to a lot of people who didn't see Solo because they thought The Last Jedi was terrible. And they're like, I didn't care. I didn't want to see Solo. So I don't know. It just seems insane. And it seems like something is going to have to, unless Disney, with Disney Plus coming out, think they don't need Spider-Man. They're like, they got all this stuff coming out.
And to that point, I'll tell you what, with a few exceptions of Thor and Black Widow, the MCU Phase 4 has got a lot of D-listers on it. Let's be very honest.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like Spider-Man would be a monument for them. Like, hey, well, if you don't like these guys, well, we got Spider-Man 3 coming soon.
I agree to an extent on that. Guardians of the Galaxy to me is a good example of a group in Marvel that I never heard of. I mean, if you read the comics, you were familiar with them, but if you didn't, they were brand new. And I was a little skeptical on how good the movie was going to be, but they're some of my favorite movies, the Guardian movies. So I'm not saying that Marvel can't pull off, to your point, D-list heroes. I just think they have a bigger uphill climb to educate the general customer than their core heroes that everybody grew up with generationally at this point.
And coming off the biggest movie of all time that was almost universally beloved.
Yeah.
It's almost like, hey, we maybe just draw a line. This is our series finale right here, because pressure's on. It ain't getting better than this.
Yeah, pressure's on to keep it big. So to your point, Spider-Man would be it is a major loss, but it would be, it may really hurt them in the long run.
Yeah. Come back, Spidey.
I haven't given up hope.
No,
but
me
I
either.
guess we'll know when we know.
Yeah, we'll keep everybody updated as we see the news.
It'll be in our thoughts and prayers.
Not all the news coming out of D23 was bad, though, was it?
No. But before we talk about that, we're going to talk about some hyperspace news.
Oh, yeah.
Coming up. The Tashi Station Diaries starts in our next episode. It is going to be a multi-part series, retrospective, going over Star Wars from the beginning until now, and ending with our review of The Rise of Skywalker.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, a great adventure took place.
In 1977, everything changed. Through the 1970s, 80s, 90s, and to the present day, Star Wars has been our companion. It has entertained us, inspired us, and yes, it has angered us and broken our hearts. But through it all, it has always fired our imaginations. As we await the final chapter of the Skywalker story in December with The Rise of Skywalker, we invite you to join us on a special retrospective journey into the Star Wars saga. The Hyperspace Podcasting in the 25th Century presents The Tashi Station Diaries.
But I was going into Tashi Station to pick up some power converters.
Coming soon. We're going to the Tashi Station to pick up those power converters, and we're inviting you along with us. So, let's go. And let's talk about the Mandalorian.
Bounty hunters. We don't need that scum.
I'll take on any job for the right price.
You are free to use any methods necessary, but I want them alive. No disintegration.
As you wish. That too has
He's all yours, bounty hunter.
Bounty hunting is a complicated profession.
Well, guys, I am over the moon excited about the Mandalorian coming out. The D23 trailer that they released is probably one of the most exciting Star Wars things I've seen in a long, long time. And I didn't watch any of the bootleg Mandalorian footage that they released about 6 months ago. I avoided it. This is the one I wanted to watch. This is the one I was waiting for, this trailer. And I have to say, it didn't let me down.
No.
This trailer has all the images, all the time frames, everything that I grew up loving about Star Wars, this trailer has. And I can't wait until November when this comes on.
No, me neither. It has Mike, I believe, said a distinct Rogue One feeling about it, which I'm all about. Starting the trailer with the dirty stormtrooper helmets buried in the sand.
The classic stormtrooper helmets. Love it.
What do you think, Mike?
Well, I like it. I think it looks pretty darn good. It's I think it's like Rogue One. It's like the Star Wars we've been hoping for since we saw the original trilogy. I mean, we've discussed the prequels, and love them or hate them, they definitely had a very different feel to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is definitely more of what we were looking for as far as like more action. It looks more Star Wars-y, kind of gets into the nooks and crannies of the universe we grew up in, grew up watching, and seeing IG-11, who I mistook for IG-88, and apparently that's part of the story. I mean, seeing him in action, which is not something they probably could have done when they made the original trilogy.
Correct.
We all agree Rogue One's the best new Star Wars movie, and it's because it takes us back to the original trilogy. And this looks like what this is going to do. And the time frame is really, something that hasn't been explored yet in the movies. And the fact that it's a TV show, we're going to get, more of it as opposed to getting a 2-hour movie and then waiting till who knows when to get the next chapter of it.
That thing, you could play that show on the biggest IMAX screen you could find, and it would look like it belonged there.
Right.
It
well,
looks
Jon Favreau
fantastic.
Jon Favreau at D23 did say the way he approached making The Mandalorian was to make it like a film. He wanted it to have the big screen feel. He wanted everything to have that kind of over-the-top, non-TV, it shouldn't just be like for your television. To your point, you should be able to go to the theater and see this and feel that you're watching a Star Wars movie. And, Jon Favreau might be that kind of angel we've all been waiting to come down and save us in the Star Wars universe, because I think he's got it right. I don't want to speak too soon, but it looks like he's in touch with what the fan base that grew up with this amazing pop culture phenomenon has been asking for. And to your point, Mike, Rogue One really touched on that as well. Rogue One really hit all the right notes for us, but I think this show coming up is going to be one of the best pieces of Star Wars that we've seen since the original trilogy.
Well, plus he's working with Filoni, and Filoni, if you think about it, he's made more Star Wars than anyone.
Yeah.
And, aside from some goofball Jar Jar episodes in the Clone Wars is fantastic. Yeah. Rebels was really good. Yep. And, I mean, this guy is creating great Star Wars. He's working with Jon Favreau. And another thing, too, is, and the thing I like, is they're not being shy about doing fan service. Apparently these days, if you do fan service, you get criticized like, oh, that's just fan service. Right. Well, yeah, but that's what the fans want to see. Right. And that's what they're doing. I mean, he's saying they're going to touch on the prequels, the original trilogies. Like, they're going to touch on everything for this show. And I think that's awesome. I love it. I think when it's all said and done, I mean, it's going to fit comfortably in that Star Wars universe. And I think Jon Favreau is just he kickstarted the Marvel universe, and now he's gonna kickstart the Star Wars live action television show, which we've been hearing about a live action television show.
Right.
I mean, how long has it been they've been talking about that? for years.
That was
A
after,
decade at least.
Yeah, after Revenge of the Sith. I mean, they had one planned. That,
they had scripts apparently. Apparently, they'd written scripts and everything.
Yeah, going back to Dave Filoni, I have to say he may be one of the great players in Star Wars history. He's our age. He was born in 1974. He grew up with this just like we did, and he's the right kind of age, the right kind of fan to belong with Star Wars. He's the one of the great gatekeepers of this kind of narrative because he grew up with it. This really is
for 8 years he worked with George Lucas every day.
Yeah, so this is in his DNA. He's the right kind of person to be attached to Star Wars. This kind of stuff that we're seeing here with the Mandalorian and what we hope with the new Obi-Wan series coming up. This is going to take Star Wars for the fan base to a new level. This is going to be, to your point, Mike, it might be a little bit of fan service, but it might be the most important stuff that we've seen, the most entertaining stuff that we've seen since the original trilogy. Better than the prequels, better than the stuff that we're coming out now with the new movies. This is the stuff that I'm really looking forward to. This stuff, it's not just an hour and a half to 2 hours of a movie to wrap up story. We're getting 10 episodes. We're getting, The Mandalorian's already signed up for 2 seasons. I mean, this is hours and hours of Star Wars, and not just what we see as experimental Star Wars, but true dyed-in-the-wool DNA Star Wars that we want. And this is amazing time. This is an amazing time for a Star Wars fan with these shows coming out.
Yeah. And it looks like a Western, and I imagine The Mandalorian is going to be a very Clint Eastwood man with no name character. And those movies, those Westerns are like amazing. Basically, all the great American movies are some form of a Western. Like the Western is like the American mythology. And to see Star Wars do that and have a character who, as the bounty hunter is, I mean, it just seems like it's surprising that it's only just now happening.
Well, I think it's now they have the infinite pockets of Disney behind this, and the technology's at a place where they're able to make a show like this. It still is like between Game of Thrones, the Lord of the Rings show, and The Mandalorian are the 3 most expensive TV shows ever made. So they are throwing money at it. And you can see it in that trailer. You're talking $25 million an episode, but that's times 10. That's a giant budget movie.
Unbelievable.
The technology's there. I know they're working with some like real time animation, like in camera, to make some of this stuff work, so they can visualize it on the set. They apparently, I guess, Werner Herzog, who plays the Imperial guy that's in the trailer, they put a VR helmet on him and just told him to look around and said, "This is where you're setting." And he's an older guy, obviously been around a long time. And he said he couldn't believe it. He's like, "Oh, wow. Are you kidding?" The technology, we're at the right time in history where the technology is available to make a show like this.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. And it's no coincidence that they're making a show about a bounty hunter, Mandalorian bounty hunter. I mean, they've been trying to find a way to do a live action Boba Fett show for a while, and which just fizzled out. But there's no coincidence here. Boba Fett was a legend in his limited role in Star Wars. He was one of my first toys that I remember. He was one of my fondest Star Wars figures. In fact, a little trivia about Jared over there. Jared, what's on your shoulder there?
On my shoulder?
Yeah. What do you got tattooed?
That's my Boba Fett tattoo. My Mandalorian mythosaur skull.
Jared has a Boba Fett tattoo on his own shoulder. And this is no coincidence. He is the Mandalorian. The lore that Boba Fett created was what helped propel Star Wars and propel a lot of Star Wars merchandising. I mean, this is going to be really a big deal. And by the way, I don't know what the plot is yet in The Mandalorian first season, but I'm hoping in season 2 we get a little Boba Fett thread going. Look, I have my cross fingers that Boba Fett's going to somehow crawl out of that pit and be a part of this show.
I'm going to go on record on this show right now and say, if Boba Fett, and I'm talking Tamora Morrison, does not make an appearance on this show at some point, I will go into my cat's litter box and eat a cat turd. I'm saying it on the record. I will do that, and I'll put it on YouTube for you to watch because it's happening.
I agree. It has to. That's gonna be your season 1 cliffhanger, a Boba Fett tease.
I'm right there with you. Exactly. I think that's what's going to happen. This series is set a few years after Return of the Jedi. I know one of Mike's favorite stories from the expanded universe is Boba climbing out of the Sarlacc with Dengar's help and then participating in Dengar's wedding. One of the first conversations I remember having with Mike in the late 90s when we started working together was how much he hated that story.
Because that was stupid. Hey.
Oh, so dumb.
Do you want to be my best man? First of all, Dengar. I mean...
He's really the of mice and men bounty hunter, isn't he?
Look, I don't want to get crude, but I mean, do you think he has the capability...
He wears a diaper on his head
to please his bride on the wedding night. I mean, come on.
Oh, wow.
Who knows? Hey, well, I want to talk about some things in this trailer if we can get off Dengar's,
Dengar's dinghy.
Something like that.
Yeah, let's get to the trailer. We mentioned it opens with the stormtrooper helmets,
and then we
buried
got
in the sand.
The heads on the pikes, which is interesting, or the helmets on the pikes. Which is a great visual. I mean, any
Empire
one of these
is not loved.
Yeah, and any one of these shots from the trailer could be a wallpaper on your laptop.
All right,
they're on Tatooine. I think that's based on the poster of the Mandalorian with the moisture evaporators and the twin suns.
Well, it wouldn't be Star Wars if there wasn't some desert planet.
Exactly, but
I would like to see him go
Tatooine.
somewhere else. Because, I mean, there are other planets out there.
Well, speaking of that, one of the first shots of the trailer is the Mandalorian's ship flying over a lush green landscape.
Looks like he stole that from Battle Beyond the Stars.
Yeah, we talked a little about that, didn't we? But then he lands on some dump here. It looks like a West Virginia mining town. But
this, I think, is where, if in the limited storyline that I know of the Mandalorian, that this might be a bounty hunter stronghold.
Yeah, and we got Apollo Creed in there.
Creed.
I think he's Dutch. Hey, what are you doing? You tired the bounty hunting? That's right.
Too many pencils.
That's right. You're pushing too many credits. Come on. So yeah, Apollo's in there, and I think he is. If he's not the head of the bounty hunting guild, then he's some higher up that hands out these bounties.
He's setting him in motion on whatever plot line we're going to follow.
And then we're back to another landscape that looks like...
Well, okay, so if we're looking at the trailer about 30 seconds in, the landscape Jared just mentioned, this is what Jared was talking about. This is some high-end effects. I mean, it is a gorgeous, gorgeous shot that if you saw this on the big screen, this would hold up to anything you've ever seen in Star Wars. These shots are just fantastic what they're putting together.
I'm saying it now. I bet you they screened the first 2 episodes of this in some sort of limited release.
Is that a cat litter box?
I'm not going there because I think they'd worry if it's too close to the opening of Rise of Skywalker. But I bet you if maybe it's for season 2, they put this in theaters. I certainly
hope so.
I would like to go see it in a theater.
I think we should do a marathon, just a good 10-hour marathon of The Mandalorian in a theater. I'd should do that.
I think I could do it. Then we see various shots of the Mandalorian suiting up, adjusting his various equipment.
A unique-looking Mandalorian armor, no antenna that we're used to seeing on Boba Fett's helmet.
Correct.
I think you could argue much more traditional, I guess, from what we've seen in the Clone Wars.
Yeah. We have a...
I mean, kind of reminded you of the ones from the Clone Wars.
Well, it's a little more... I'd say it's more Boba Fett than Jango Fett. I think a lot of the Clone War Mandalorians were more Jango than Boba. Because this guy's... It looks kind of like a hodgepodge.
I think he had a mix. He had a good mix there.
He also carries the pike that was in the holiday special.
Yes.
Did you know that?
Are we
It
finally?
is. Oh, you're
that's
right.
that's a deep cut right there.
Oh man,
They
it's called a slug thrower, but it's you know
Yeah.
you know what I thought it was at first. Aurora Singh that we briefly see in the Phantom Menace, perched on a rock above the pod race, carries a similar weapon, only it's different on the muzzle end, and I thought that's what was hers. But you know, I didn't even realize that it's Boba Fett's from the cartoon. This is what we're talking about. This is fan service. This is Jon Favreau and Filoni taking stuff that only the true diehard Star Wars fans are going to pick up on, and that's why this is going to work.
I'm glad I live in a world where something from the holiday special was 3D printed and made real.
Hey pal, I'll get you home for Life Day. Don't you worry.
Maybe he'll get to have some of those
VR sessions.
Wookiee cookies.
Oh man!
Look. Yeah, the mind evaporator.
That's a whole different episode,
dude.
You know,
if that thing's been swapped
I think it's fair that around Christmas time we'll have to do a holiday special review.
Oh yeah, it's a must. Oh gosh. Then we have a shot of the lovely Gina Carano.
Yeah. Breaking Bad fame.
Was she in Breaking Bad? Gina Carano?
Oh no, I'm sorry. She was in Deadpool.
That's right.
Yeah, she's in Deadpool.
Yeah. Then we have an Ugnaught astride a creature from another deep cut here, a creature from the Ewok movies. That lizard he's riding first appeared as a stop motion puppet in the Ewok movies.
Oh, you're right. And it had the what were they called? What are they called? The Marauders.
Yes, the Marauders
riding them. Right.
And they also appeared in some Clone Wars episodes.
Now, I have to say, I'm looking at that Ugnaught, and there's something familiar about that Ugnaught.
He looks kind of like Nick Nolte. Because
Nick Nolte.
Because he is.
It's Nick Nolte as an Ugnaught. This is great.
Is he really Nick Nolte?
Nick Nolte is that Ugnaught.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
He voices him, obviously.
He probably needed no makeup.
They just shrunk him down with a computer. Hey Nick.
I mean, good for Nick Nolte, but this is him paying the rent at this point.
I didn't know that. know that.
Nick Nolte. Hey Nick, just don't comb your hair and come on in. No problem.
Okay, that sounds fantastic. I'll do it.
You want me to play the Mandalorian? No.
You're gonna be
how about an Ugnaught?
You're gonna be a pig man.
Ugnaught and a bag of Taco Bell, and we'll bring you on.
That sounds Oh, let's do it.
I can't wait. This is great.
Okay, and we got a Twi'lek there. Look at that.
I like the wink.
Yeah,
I'm curious to know who she is. She gives us a nice little, little like knowing wink.
It's nice to see original trilogy aliens. Let me just put that out there. Does it look like she's on a leash or something? Then we got of course, the iconic shot of him walking in the desert with the sun setting, a woman and her child, and then we have a bunch of death troopers here from Rogue One.
Oh, yes.
The death
who mysteriously could talk in Rebels.
Love the speeder bike scenes. Very familiar speeder bike.
You got the also an ATST there. You see it. You see the bottom. You see its legs.
Now, did the front toes of the ATST curl down like that? Did it have that capability in the past, or is this a new model that we're seeing?
Not in the Jedi, they didn't.
I don't know.
This looks a little more terrain capable.
Possibly. I know it's an ATST because I've already seen the Lego toy for it.
Oh, there's toys out for them already?
There's going to be. I saw a picture of it.
Well, I mean, with that sound effect and those lasers going
off. It's an ATST,
yeah. Yeah, it's no mistaking.
And some of these scenes look very Rogue One-ish of the people running through the city. And then we got a little space battle clip. And that gun that the Mandalorian mans, I don't know if you guys looked at that picture I sent you a few days ago. It is based on the toy tripod laser gun that came out for the Kenner figures, down to the details on the side of it. They basically just made it a big.
Wow.
So a little old school Kenner there, getting some love from Filoni and Favreau. And then we have IG-11 spinning around.
Voiced by
Taika Waititi.
Taika Waititi.
Yeah, that's right.
I like to hear cool. Hey, I'm here. Everyone tend themselves in.
And then we have a nice showdown with the stormtroopers, and Werner Herzog's.
Well, let's talk
character.
about those stormtroopers
Oh.
real quick. Those stormtroopers have
They've seen
been
some
through hell and
stuff.
back. They're not looking too good.
Their armor's dirty. They look run down, and that's cool that you can just tell that from this trailer. Like, and there's something. The Empire's not faring too well these days. We see some nice barroom brawling where he takes a Quarren, aka a squid head, and smashes his face into the bar.
Head.
And then this
Always wondered how those guys could hang out in the desert.
the squid head.
Yeah, seems
Yeah.
like they would like dry out pretty quick.
Yeah, because they're from the same.
Finally, I'm on Tatooine, and I.
Yeah, because they share the planet Mon Calamari with the Mon Calamari, and they've got giant ball sacks on the back of their head.
Yes, that's true. I'd hate to see them during spawning season.
Oh, jeez. Then probably one of the coolest shots of the trailer where he traps the guy in the door and presumably cuts him in half.
Then leads into one of the best shot of the whole trailer. Carbonite dominoes.
Yeah, the carbonite dominoes. And it looks like they are maybe in his ship because you see him walking away from them. So that is really clever.
And now when we saw the Carbonite imprisonment, Han Solo and Empire, that was an opportunistic kind of transportation method that they just happen to have there on Bespin,
Mm-hmm.
which makes me wonder, was that the kickoff of the Carbonite craze?
Possibly.
Did the bounty hunters go, man, that's really smart.
Well, remember,
and they saw it in Jabba's palace hanging up.
Yeah, he hung in Jabba's palace for a year.
That's what I'm saying. So maybe that became a trend. Maybe that's like
No, you're both wrong.
Oh, he's going back to
you
the
remember
Clone Wars.
The Clone Wars.
But they weren't trying to. That wasn't anything to do with bounty hunting.
Yeah, but Darth Vader was like, oh man, how can I get Han Solo? Oh wait, is there a carbonite chamber here?
He's just itching to
God, I just remember that time we snuck into that base.
Yeah,
and
they
we froze
themselves. I remember that.
So
I'm just talking about a bounty hunting trend. I think they
Yes.
kicked off a really good trend in the universe there.
Yeah, I agree. I think Jabba having him hang in the palace there probably gave a lot of people ideas. And Bespin's
And
not
then,
the
of
only
course-
place that you can carbon freeze something.
No, of course. Maybe it got much more compact, like little microwave ovens, in
Just
the
a little
ship.
vat. You dip them in. Okay.
Will you get my burrito out for me? Oh, now you're carbon frozen.
And then we end with Werner Herzog giving us the what we heard earlier in the podcast here.
Yeah, the
hunting's a complicated profession. Don't you agree?
yeah.
Very cool.
Some of the coolest 2 minutes of Star Wars I've seen in a long time. A long time.
Another thing I'd like to point out too that's cool about The Mandalorian is we're getting original stories. As much as I enjoyed The Force Awakens, I mean, it was just A New Hope. So it's kind of cool that we're getting completely original stories that are hopefully good, which it looks like it's going to be good.
Yeah, and it's really, to go back to what you said earlier, Mike, it's really exploring the grittier side of Star Wars. But
I think Solo touched on that too.
Yeah, I mean, Rogue One and Solo, I think, each got into the weeds a little bit in the dirty part of Star Wars, which is very attractive, and it's something that, if you look at the novelization of Star Wars, a lot of people have gravitated to that side for a reason. The dirty part of the universe is always a little more attractive than the cut and dry. So I'm looking forward to what they do.
That was one thing about Rogue One. I love that open when you first see
Jin
Urso.
When she's on the transport and those stormtroopers come on and they're just filthy. They're just so
Big
dirty
dreadnought.
looking.
Yeah.
So
I'm really looking forward to it.
And before we move on from The Mandalorian, in other Star Wars television news, it was confirmed at D23 by Ewan McGregor himself. He's coming back to play Obi-Wan Kenobi next year.
Yay.
Yes.
Yay.
Nice.
And the new timeline they released at the D23 Expo for Star Wars, the Kenobi series takes place concurrently with the events of Solo.
Oh, really?
I'm not saying
okay.
I'm not saying they'll cross over, but there's potential for maybe some of the story threads that we probably will never see in a theater again could be possibly picked up, where maybe Kenobi is having to deal with Crimson Dawn. I wouldn't want to see him and Han Solo interact. I think that'd be a little too wink at the audience, but you know,
I don't think they could have Maul and Kenobi interact.
I know Darth Vader has been confirmed for the series.
I think seeing him and Maul on Rebels is
yeah, that's probably the last. Yeah, I get the impression they hadn't seen each other in a long time.
You have to wonder if they're going to recreate the Rebel scene or just let that be on its own.
They'll probably let it be. Although it would be interesting
to see that live action. Would just be so great.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, you could do it where it's somehow, you could have an actor play
Alec Guinness.
The kid that was on Rebels. I'm forgetting everyone's
Ezra
name today. Ezra. He just doing something and he intertwines with Ezra, and Ezra, he leaves soon after he meets Kenobi, and then they could recreate that scene with Ray Park. So I don't know. I doubt they'll do it, but that'd be kind of cool.
But I think it. I'd like the last shot of the Kenobi show to be maybe perhaps a recreated Alec Guinness right before he does the crate dragon scream. To walk
just
over,
connect it right up. Huh?
Yeah, to walk right over the ridge and go get Luke, like just from a different perspective, and then that's the last shot of the show.
Give it a Rogue One ending, and
just link it right up
together.
Yeah, but
that would be kind of awesome, actually.
All right, so we're going to move from the TV screen now to the big screen and talk a little bit about the footage we saw from Episode 9.
So now we hear what they decided to drop towards the end, if not the end. And the thing that everyone was waiting for is some more footage of Rise of Skywalker. And of course, they kind of like built your hopes up a little bit, because when you see the clip is like 3 minutes long and you're like, oh, 3 minutes. And of course, it's only like a minute of the 3 minutes. But I have to say, so far, I mean, it looks, it's like JJ's like, hey, guys, I'm sorry about The Last Jedi. I'm just going to give you everything you could ever possibly want in a Star Wars movie. The shots of the Star Destroyers. I don't know. The lightsaber with Rey with the, somebody called it a switchblade lightsaber. Well, at first I was kind of like, well, I don't know. It seems kind of like maybe unnecessary. But then, of course, Matt sent that meme where that type of lightsaber has been used before in the Clone Wars.
You remember General Krell?
Yes.
He had the same similar type of thing.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Oh, he was a great character. But anyway, so far, there's no way I'm not seeing this movie. I know people are like, I'm not going to see any more Star Wars. But there's no way I'm not. I have got to see how they bring this home.
Yeah,
and he gave us a lot of great little tease points in this trailer. I mean,
I think
they gave you, Mike, a new desert planet.
Well, you can never have too many desert planets.
So it looks like we've got Pisana. This is the new desert planet.
Yes, but Mike told me he thinks it looks like that's the celebration or whatever's happening there.
Oh, Sakaar.
It looks like Sakaar from Ragnarok.
It does.
It's very similar color scheme.
Well, I tell you what, would anyone complain if they ran across Jeff Goldblum? I mean, seriously. Would anyone mind?
I'd be happy to see him come into
Did
the
you
universe.
watch the trailer for his show as a quick aside?
Oh, it's so weird.
Yeah, I just remember, as a quick aside, we'll continue in a moment, but when me and Mike met him to get a picture, we walked in, he's like, he sort of did the, hey, hi, how are you? And then I remember his hand was he put his arm around us, and his hand was at the small of my back. And then when the person took the picture, he gave me the little double tap on the back and said, hey, thanks for coming.
He was really nice.
He was.
No, we don't want to make it sound like he was
He was tall,
unpleasant
he was a tall
in any
gentleman.
way. He was really into it. He was really having fun with the people that were getting their pictures made, and he was
It was cool.
fun.
I mean, it was cool to get our picture made with him.
Hey, Jeff Goldblum's become one of those like national treasures. He's just a unique individual.
Maybe he'll pop up in a Star Wars film, which brings us back to
the one we were
having
discussing.
Chewie, Rey, Finn, and Poe on Pisana, or on Sakaar. We've got 3PO in there too, and if you
no
look,
R2D2 though.
no, but if you look, you can see the Falcon is parked to the
Back right
of Poe, so the Falcon's there, and then we have this celebration or whatever this is. Then we have
I
a
don't know.
shot of Leia standing in the jungle.
That was
Which jungle?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
That was shot. I guess that's extra footage from when she was saying goodbye to Rey.
Yeah, and
they managed to use.
and they
So at least it's not CGI recreation. It's actually footage of Carrie Fisher. Which is
it does look like they have aged her up a little bit from how she looked in Force Awakens.
Yeah, did they say there's a time jump
Yes, there's
in this one?
This is, well, it's not huge. It's like a year after Last Jedi. So this would be a
So
year
the
after
Rebel-
Force Awakens.
The resistance is now up to 20 people.
Yes. Yes, it is. So this planet could be Endor, possibly.
Wouldn't that be great to get Leia back on Endor? That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah. But just seeing, there's always going to be a curiosity how something like this looks, because obviously she's no longer with us, and
Right.
but it looks completely fine. It looks totally real. I mean,
But at this point in the trailer, this is where JJ throws in everything in the kitchen sink.
the fleet coming out of hyperspace in some sort of nebula thing.
And every ship that we see in the Rebel Alliance or whatever, the Resistance, are core ships. We've got Y-wings, X-wings. We've got a Corellian Corvette, which I'm hoping is the Tantive 4.
Yeah.
And what is we see some A-wings. I see some B-wings.
B-wings.
And what is missing,
Here we go.
Mike?
Oh,
What is missing?
I can only hope they come back. Those amazing linear flying, slow moving bombers.
Ugh.
Well, they were
Those
all
would be like,
they were all destroyed.
instead of, yeah, they could send those out as sort of like, okay, we'll give the Empire something to shoot at while we get the real fleet ready.
Exactly.
We'll send the people we don't like. All right, Fred,
but-
you're in the bomber. Crap.
Well, it looks like there's probably about 20 ships in this shot, and if you scroll it a little forward, they are vastly outnumbered.
Right.
Like, that is an understatement. There is no subtlety about what is happening in the next shot. Original trilogy era Star Destroyers. If you look closely, all of these Star Destroyers are original trilogy. What is that about? Is this the Emperor's
have a
secret
theory.
fleet?
I have a theory about this fleet.
Okay.
I have a theory. Because later in this trailer, we do see something very reminiscent of a Death Star blast hitting the planet, albeit smaller in its capacity. But it is very, very similar to what we see in the past with the Death Star blast. So my theory is that this is a mobile Death Star. That these ships together are outfitted with smaller versions of the Death Star cannon, and together can act as a Death Star weapon.
It's very specific.
Yeah, my problem with that is another Death Star.
Well,
I mean, we've had like
we've already had
two
we
Death
have a Death
Stars,
Star
we had
in the movie too.
Right. Yeah, but it's like the remains of one.
True.
I'm just saying that because we do see something very powerful hitting the planet that looks like a Death Star ray. So.
I'd like to see something more Force-centric as opposed to technology. Like if the Emperor, I'm not even convinced we're going to see the Emperor. I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't like the Foundation books where the character returns every so often as a hologram. If they do something like that where the Emperor, it's like a hologram that they find, or
no, I think I don't think they'll do that. If they do that, that's a huge cheat.
Well,
I think
I'm gonna save the meat of my theory to the end of this, but I have a theory.
after the Star Destroyers, we have looks like
Some
Finn,
orcs.
Finn and one of the new characters in maybe the Falcon cockpit.
I'd say that's the Falcon.
Yeah, and then a Red Eye 3PO. Interesting.
What
look.
the heck is that?
I think that's just him still mad at me from taking a picture.
That's what happened to him
Flash.
after he got flashed in the eyes by Matt at Star Wars in concert.
Using my flash photography when I wasn't supposed to. Still mad.
Well, that's an interesting look for 3PO. And there's the. Go ahead, Mike.
Nothing. I just imagine the look on Matt's face when Anthony Daniels just stops, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I just caused that."
Yeah, because he didn't know the flash was on. He was trying to take the pictures without the flash, and boom. And there was a distinct pause and glare over. He was 20 feet away from us.
I didn't know the flash is on.
Oh man! So we got angry.
The only
3PO.
time that there's been a red-eyed C-3PO, I think it was back in the comics. He was it wasn't C-3PO. It was a protocol droid that was like I don't know if he was a bounty hunter or.
Are you talking about in the Droids comics that Dark Horse did?
So there was one protocol droid that looked like C-3PO, but he had red eyes. But he was
he's
like
a bounty hunter.
He was a baddie.
Well,
we'll
so
see. And he gets up he gets up with a little bit of authority.
Yeah,
there.
something's happened to 3PO. He gets new programming downloaded to him or something.
I don't know. I mean, Darth Vader built him.
That's true. Maybe the Emperor's like,
Use your original programming, 3PO.
Maybe he slipped something in a 3PO when he had him on
Cloud City. Possibly.
Oh yeah. And then our next scene, we see we mentioned earlier,
the planet being bombarded. Then we got a pretty cool little shot here in the woods. Again, indoor, maybe.
Well, and we see a training droid that
Yes.
Luke used in the Falcon. The first time I think we've seen it in
She's
Star Wars.
She's throwing her lightsaber. She cuts that tree, catches it. Cool little scene.
Well, actually, the lightsaber throw was something we saw limited with Darth Vader in the movies, but we never saw like the throw and return.
Yeah, that
per
comes
se.
back.
And that's something that I heard that JJ was a fan of in the Jedi Outcast video games and the computer games.
Because that's certainly
Star Wars
something
came out
you
with.
could do in the games.
Yeah, and it was this is the first time I think we're really seeing that kind of fun throwback to other Star Wars entertainment coming out in the movies.
And we'll follow that with a shot of Kylo Ren looking pissed off as always.
His TIE interceptor.
Yes, it's behind him.
Looking great.
And I'll say again, I really like Adam Driver in these movies.
Yeah, he's been the strong glue of these movies.
I mean, even in The Last Jedi, I like what he does with what
You like the scene where his shirt was off too.
Yes.
I remember you talking about that.
Chesty Driver.
Ben Swallow.
That was one of my favorites.
So I don't think that this scene they show in the trailer of him walking and then fighting, I think these are two different things that are happening here. Because the next scene cuts to them on the Death Star in the ocean fighting.
Jared, you pointed out in a conversation earlier this week that there's some great turbo lasers from the Death Star over there
on the left side of the screen. And I think they may be fighting on the edge.
What is it with JJ putting stuff underwater?
In the water? Well, in this case,
one day he's going to make a water movie. I mean, he's just aching to make one.
I think, I think this shot is really amazing. I mean, just the waves, it just feels huge.
Yeah.
And I think they may be fighting on the edge of what was once a trench, too.
Well, this has the possibility of being the final lightsaber battle that we get to see in the core movies here.
Yeah.
Before they move off and branch off into new Star Wars stories. That this might be the final lightsaber battle.
Yeah. And that shot of them in the water, I love that shot. Then we have a little bit of dialogue from Mr. Ian McDermott.
Your journey. Yes, it's in.
If Anakin and Obi-Wan don't show up in this movie, again, going on record, I'll eat a turd. I will eat one, a turd. And that's happening, we'll know in December. So,
Man, you're going to have a big plate of turds.
No.
So then we move on, of course, to one of the most...
The most
dare I
discussed.
say, Rey with her...
Was she bad?
Amazingly cool double saber staff.
What's happening here? What are your theories?
All right, I'm going to go on record myself. Okay, after watching the first two movies...
Are there going to be turd eating involved?
You know what?
No, you don't have to.
I'm pretty confident on this theory, but I don't know if I'm turd confident.
I'm just going to go on record as saying is I am not eating any turds in any situation.
Well, you're a coward.
My theory, guys, after watching this and seeing how they portrayed Rey and, the obvious question of the character who are her parents, and, we get the odd image from the last movie of her staring into a mirror and seeing herself. I think my theory is that Rey is a clone, which is not an unpopular theory on the internet. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of clone theories that she's a clone, but in particular, I think that she was created by Palpatine from Luke Skywalker's hand from Bespin. I think they managed to get Rey cloned. I don't know to what capacity, but it would explain a lot about why the lightsaber and her are connected, why she has the force powers that she has, why she had a connection with Luke. And I'm not, at first you might assume that this Rey that we see with the double red saber might be a Force dream or something that we saw similar in Empire with Luke walking into the dark side cave on Dagobah. But I think this might be actually another clone. This might be Emperor Palpatine's apprentice, that he used the other Rey as a clone, dropping her off, knowing that she was going to draw out the Resistance with it, that she would be drawn to the Resistance, that she'd be drawn to Luke Skywalker, and she would bring that element to him for this final showdown, where he can annihilate it for once and then take over the universe. That's my theory. I'm going on record now. That's where she came from. That's what this is all about.
I'm going to read something here from one of our listeners named Keith. Rey is a clone derived from Skywalker blood. Maz Kanata said in Force Awakens the lightsaber now calls to her after saying Anakin and Luke had it. The Last Jedi vision shows Rey with the mirror infinity reflection, insinuating that she's one of many. Clone tech will connect to the prequels. Wouldn't be that far-fetched.
There you go. See? Now, the clone blood, and Keith, I think Keith is right. I think the clone blood came from Luke Skywalker's hand.
Yeah.
And I think it all was orchestrated by old Palpy sitting high on his oceanfront property.
Yeah. So
getting a little suntan on his wrinkled face.
I think I'm coming around to that. Initially, I thought it was just going to be a vision that was given to her or maybe to Kylo or somebody. But I'm coming around to the clone thing. If Rey is a clone, that kind of removes the question of her parentage.
I think she was a plant. I think she was planted to do exactly what she's done. And now she's exceeded those plans and she's become something much more powerful than what they could have expected.
So you're saying the girl we see with the Maul saber is a different girl from Rey?
I think there's a distinct possibility that could be Emperor Palpatine's personal apprentice.
Gotcha.
Well, if you look at her face, she looks different.
Yeah.
A little more gaunt.
Yeah, she doesn't. But that could be the Force vision, being evil, that you become that way.
Entire possibility, absolutely.
I think the theory is sound.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like to speculate because usually I'm wrong. But also I just like to be surprised. So I really don't have any theories on it. So
you're just going to go in clean.
I think it's an interesting theory. I guess we'll just have to see.
Yeah.
I wouldn't hate that. I don't think that would be.
Right. Yeah.
I don't think that would be something that would be like, what? Oh, come on.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's fair to say that coming off The Last Jedi, everyone was a little tainted on these sequel movies, and I see this footage, and I'm excited about it. I have a good feeling about this movie. I have high hopes, just like I said about The Mandalorian. I have high hopes that J.J. Abrams is going to end it well.
Yeah.
And he's going to put it all together. There's already some really cool images that we're getting to see here. And I think the right people are at the helm again. I really have a lot of faith in it.
I agree.
I don't know, man. I mean, I hope so. I'm holding my breath a little bit. But
well, on December 19th at 11 p.m., hopefully you will be able to exhale. But anyway, that was an excellent hour of Star Wars. And if you want to hear more Star Wars, next week we start the Tashi Station Diaries. We're going to be taking deep dives into Episode 4, A New Hope, and we're going to talk about the first time each of us experienced Star Wars. And that is going to be a semi-regular series going forward into the winter months. So please, come on back. You know you can't live without this content, so subscribe to the Hyperspace Podcasting in the 25th Century. Follow us on social media, leave us a review, and join us here next time as we take you into the 25th century.